From the pilot who flew a plane for 5 days straight to the stuntman who held onto a plane's wing mid-air, these are aviation moments you wouldn't have believed if they weren't caught on camera. The Solar Impulse 2 created a new world record for the longest solo flight in history. A fact within a fact. Did you know that Singapore Airlines is the only commercial airline in the world right now flying an 18-hour non-stop flight? That's right. The flight takes passengers on a journey from one corner of the globe to another. That's from Singapore to the United States over the course of almost a day. Imagine having to go through that long of a flight. Well, Andre Borschberg flew a one-man plane for a lot longer than that. Almost 100 hours longer. That's right. In 2015, Andre flew the Solar Impulse across the globe in a bid to show the world the uniqueness of the world's first solar-powered aircraft. The aircraft came to its final destination in Hawaii after covering its longest stretch yet, from China to the United States. This ended Steve Fawcett's run for the longest solo stretch, which he acquired in 2006 after flying non-stop for 3 days, 76 hours.
Like and subscribe right now, and you'll have amazing luck for the rest of the week.
Robert H. Starr managed to create and fly the world's smallest manned aircraft with a wingspan of only 6.5 feet. Starr had one goal, and one goal only in mind when he started work on the Bumblebee 2, and that was to set a new world record. Interestingly, he'd been the previous record holder for the same title with, obviously, the Bumblebee A's. It wasn't until Ray Stitz created the Baby Bird in 1984 that Starr was dethroned. Now, more determined than ever, the American designer set out to defy the laws of physics, with an aircraft that'd be smaller than most people riding it. Another interesting characteristic of the Bumblebee is, ironically, its name. Bumblebees do not have enough wingspan to fly, neither does Starr's aircraft, yet both defy the odds. Conversely, the Start-A-Launch turns heads everywhere with its massive size. The world's largest aircraft is actually a twin carrier, that's 2 aircraft welded into one, and has been aptly categorized as a mothership carrier. This would be the Scaled Composites Model 351 Strat-A-Launch, simply referred to as the Rock. It took the company 6 years to build the massive carrier, and it first took test flight in 2017 before being made available for flights in 2019. The Rock has a wingspan of close to 400 feet. That's almost 100 feet greater than the previous title holder, the Spruce Goose, with a wingspan of only 300 feet. Did you know? The El Al Boeing sparked controversy when it transported over 1,000 people from Ethiopia to Israel. It wasn't a pleasant flight, but it was historic. The El Al Boeing 747 created a world record in the hubbub of Operation Solomon when it transported over 1,000 passengers from Ethiopia to Israel. The operation was a covert Israeli military operation from 1991 to airlift Ethiopian Jews to Israel. Altogether, 35 aircraft transported close to 15,000 people in a period of 36 hours. Of those, over 1,000 were attributed to one aircraft, the 747. Some reports suggest 1,008, and some suggest 1,012. Interestingly, 2 babies were also born on that flight. Another aviation miracle was when Emma Carey fell 14,000 feet from the air without a parachute and somehow survived. In 2013, 20-year-old Emma Carey fulfilled her lifelong dream when she strapped herself to a skydiver and plummeted 14,000 feet from the air over the majestic Swiss Alps. However, this dream soon became a nightmare when Emma realized her parachute wasn't working. In front of her eyes, the parachute flew away in an entangled mess. Emma and her instructor were now plummeting to the ground at high speed, with nothing to save them. But they lived, with a few broken bones and a complete loss of sensation in her lower body. But Emma managed to live to tell the tale. Wes Winter was in a race against time during a 1983 air show when his plane lost a wing mid-air. The 1983 air show at the Plainview Municipal Airport turned into a catastrophic scene as stuntman Wes Winter lost the wing of his plane in mid-air. Winter's wife was the commentator that evening as her husband completed 2 passes in his Paranavia P-68C, making rolls and the figure 8 in the air. For his final trick, Winter would perform a loop in the plane. Interestingly, the Winters acknowledged that the plane was not meant for aerobatic stunts and had not been modified. Right as the announcement was made, a crowd of 300 spectators watched in horror as Winter's plane lost a wing from the top of the loop and then dove nose first into the ground. Wes Winter, unfortunately, did not survive the crash. This was the terrifying moment skydivers barely survived a mid-air crash. A 2013 video showing two skydiving planes colliding mid-air as the passengers and pilot on board fight for their lives has gone viral. As the flames engulfed the plane, it was impossible to think anyone could survive, yet everyone aboard did. The pilots and passengers strapped on their parachutes and managed to jump to safety. Meanwhile, one plane crash landed on the ground. The other made its way back to the runway. Miraculously, none of the 9 passengers or 2 pilots suffered serious injuries in the crash. A terrifying incident in the moment, but a fun story to tell now. This was the moment a goose collided with an airplane's windshield. In 2014, an almost fatal incident took place when a goose broke through the windshield of a Cessna plane. The Canada Goose slammed into the cockpit of the plane shortly after takeoff at Brookridge Air Park in Downers Grove. Pilot Ken Baird and passenger Norm Fries did their best to stay calm, as a camera captured the moment the bird crashed through the windshield, sending debris and plexiglass spraying through the cockpit. The damage could have been a lot worse than the resulting broken windshield. Yet another case of birds ignoring air traffic protocol. Birds around airports can be a big safety risk because they might collide with planes, which can lead to dangerous situations, especially during takeoff or landing. You can see it right here in this video. To avoid these bird strikes, airports use various methods to keep birds away. For instance, they might play loud noises, set up reflective devices, or use trained birds of prey to scare other birds off. Some airports even change the environment, like trimming grass and removing water sources, to make it less attractive for birds. There are also high-tech solutions, such as radar systems, to detect and track bird movements, helping to prevent potential collisions. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Or is it a Dutch engineer with custom-built wings flying in the air? A Dutch engineer named Jarno Smeets made history in 2012 when he took off in the air with custom-built wings. Jarno claimed that he'd been working on the wings for a period of 2 years before finally taking them out for a test flight. The first flight failed, but the second, which was filmed and uploaded onto his blog and later YouTube, was a success. Jarno flew a few feet in the air, glided through the sky, and made the impossible possible. However, the video has sparked controversy with some people debating if it's doctored. A stuntman's biggest dream. This guy took a ride on the plane. That's right, holding onto its wing for dear life. This 2010 video looks like it's straight out of a nightmare. But the men you see here are trained professionals who are used to this sort of stunt. As the Icelandic pilot makes a G-roll through the air, the stuntman grabs onto the wing of the aircraft, ready to soar through the skies. The stunt's impressive, that's for sure. But it's better left to the professionals. Changing the face of aviation forever, Japan debuted the world's first flying bike. In 2021, Japan did the impossible when it created the world's first hoverbike. The X-Turismo hoverbike was a smash hit at an air show in Asia, where it navigated the skies in its first test flight. Just a year later, in 2022, the hoverbike made its US debut at the Detroit Air Show. The bike is capable of flying over 50 feet in the air with a maximum speed of 62 kilometers an hour and a maximum cruise time of around 40 minutes. For $770,000, you might be the proud new owner of a one-of-a-kind hoverbike, too. Imagine the passenger's fear as the pilot told them he was locked out of the cockpit. Few things are scarier than an emergency landing, and a pilot telling 168 passengers on board that he's just been locked out of the cockpit would be one of them. In 2015, a Delta Airlines pilot had to calm down passengers as he revealed their Los Angeles-bound flight would be making an emergency landing. The reason? Well, the pilot couldn't get back into the cockpit. The co-pilot, however, was inside, and he landed the plane safely and without incident. Delta claimed that they were investigating the incident and promised to fix the technical fault. The passengers, meanwhile, were just happy to be alive and well. The shocking moment a plane collided with an SUV. The last thing you'd expect to crash into when you're on the highway is an airplane, probably because they're meant for the air, right? In this case, an SUV collided with a single-jet airplane, and no, the SUV wasn't the one with wings. In fact, in 2020, CCTV footage captured the moment a small carrier jet made an emergency landing on the Minnesota highway, barely missing the 2 cars it flew over, and grazing the SUV right in front of it. The impact, however, frightened the driver who steered the vehicle off the highway. Fortunately, Highway Patrol and EMS were at the scene in a matter of minutes, and everyone, the pilot, driver, and passengers, made it out with only minor injuries. The moment B-747 challenged A340 to a race, pilots are told that the last thing they should ever do when they're several thousands of feet above the ground, with several tens of passengers on board, is to challenge another carrier to a flight. That still doesn't mean, however, that sometimes passengers get to experience the thrill of watching another aircraft fly by. This 2015 video shows the moment when a Virgin Atlantic aircraft, A340, flew close by to the Delta B-747 as the two planes were in an alleged race. It was a close call, but the Delta carrier was the winner. Ever wondered what happens when someone opens the emergency exit in midair? Well, here's what. In 2023, one man on board an Asiana Airlines jet en route to South Korea let his intrusive thoughts take over when he opened the emergency exit while the aircraft was in the air. The man, identified only by his surname, Lee, reportedly told the police that he opened the door because he felt uncomfortable and wanted to get off the plane quickly. Lee allegedly forced open the emergency exit while the plane was 700 feet in the air, causing mass panic on board. Lee was quickly restrained, and the passengers were told to buckle up as the plane made an emergency landing. Video footage from inside the aircraft shows passengers clutching their seatbelts as they brace for impact. Lee was arrested when the plane landed and reportedly handed a 3-year suspended sentence on account of his mental state, but ordered to pay a fine of 7 million won. Luckily, no passengers were hurt during the incident. Which one of these insane aviation moments surprised you the most?